Hello, everybody. It's Book Suggestion Saturday. Sorry for the inconsistencies, but I apparently just can't keep up with putting one out every single Saturday. So it's more like Saturdays when I think about it and when I come to it. Let's talk about a series of books by an author, I believe you pronounce her name Jean M Auel. At least that's how I always say it, Jean M Auel. Jean Auel. My mom had these books when I was a kid. This is the first kind of grown-up book that I read when I was a kid. These were the first mature books, if you know what I mean. Like they got the dirty sex stuff in them. And I don't think my mom really remembered, or she didn't think about it when she let me read them, or else she might have been like, I think you're not old enough to read this, but oh well. So my mom had these books and she loved them, and she kind of told me all about them. She's like, this story's so great. She didn't remember all the details and stuff. And I was like, I want to read them. And she's like, oh, I guess if you're really careful with them and treat them good, and sure, you can borrow them and read them. I was probably, I don't know how old I was. I was maybe like 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there, like pre-teenage. The first book I loved, and it just really pulled me in. Now, these books are like this thick. They're thick books. And normally that discourages me. Like, I like thin books. I like picture books. I like books with big words. Like, I love reading, but if it's just one story and it's that thick, it's intimidating to me. But I just started it, and the words were really small too. Like, it had like small little bitty words on the page and no pictures. So the first book is The Clan of the Cave Bear. They made a movie about it in like the 80s. And the movie kind of sucked big time. Like, kind of like Dune, how it sucked big time. This movie didn't do very well. It's not a very good concept for a movie. I think they could have done it better, though. But it's hard to make it into a movie. It works better as a book, I think, because most of the first book... well, let me just tell you the story, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. The story is about this girl named AYLA, I believe. She has blonde hair, blue eyes, very beautiful girl. This is back in the caveman times, back in the prehistoric caveman times, primitive times is when the book takes place. She lives with her family, her little clan of people, and an earthquake has just recently happened. So I don't know if that's why they're on the move, or if they're just a nomadic tribe that does that anyways. I think that that's why they're on the move, is because maybe their house got destroyed, their place where they were living got destroyed by earthquakes, but I'm not for sure. So she's in this nomadic tribe. They're traveling, setting up camps with tents and whatnot here and there and traveling along, and she's only like 3 years old. And they have stopped and camped out on this creek, the side of this creek, and everybody is still asleep. And she gets up before everybody else, because she's 3, and sneaks out and goes for a swim in the creek. And she says in the book that she's always known how to swim, Apparently, in that group of people, they teach their children how to swim from infancy, and so they always know how to swim very well. Don't have to worry about that. So she's swimming in the creek, and everything starts to go crazy, and she's like, the water is shaking and spinning, and something weird's going on. And she makes it out of the creek on the other side of the creek. She's like, what has happened? And everything's shaking, like the earth is shaking violently, because it's another earthquake. And the something like the earth opens up, or maybe they're on the edge of a cliff and the cliff crumbles off. But the entire group that was sleeping in the tents, her whole family, her whole group of people, it just kind of crumbles and they all fall down into this, like off the edge of a cliff or into this large ravine or something, and they all die. Her entire group is wiped out, and she's just this 3-year-old girl by herself in the middle of nowhere in this prehistoric wilderness. Great start to a great story, huh? I think it's cool. She just starts wandering around, 3 years old. You know, she's vulnerable to the elements and to predators, and, you know, there's no way she's going to survive. She needs food, she needs water, she needs shelter, she needs to stay away from predators and have some place to sleep at night without, you know, being attacked. So she's 3, so she doesn't fully understand what to do to try to survive. I think she picks berries and she follows the creek and gets water and stuff like that. At one point she sees in the distance what they call a cave lion, which I'm assuming is kind of like a saber-toothed cat, a big, you know, old, those cats, a big muscular lion-like wild cat. She kind of sees it in the distance, and she's like, oh my God, I have to hide now. And it sees her, and it's like, ooh, prey. And she's able to duck into this hole, into like a cave, but it's like just a little hole that she could squeeze into and go down far enough to where, and the lion can only put its paw in and swipe, but just barely missing her, and it claws her thigh, like her leg. It gets a gash along her thigh, making like claw scratches. But it's not deep enough that it's gonna kill her or anything. It's like scratches her. Pretty bad wound, but not, you know, gonna kill her unless it gets affected, I guess. She hides out in that hole and sleeps and stays in there as long as she can, and she's like, you know, she needs water, she needs food, she needs to get out of there, she needs help, she needs medical care. She ends up just like passing out on the ground. Just, you know, she's on the brink of death. There's another group of people in the story. It's very clever how they tell it, how she tells it. The people that AYLA came from are more human looking, like what we look like now. They have brown hair, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes. Like, they have more differences in the way they look. They're tall, they stand up straight, you know, statuesque, whatever. Good looking people, you know, you would say. So this other group of people, they're more like primitive, ape-like caveman people that are, they walk kind of hunched over, and they all have brown hair, brown eyes. They're all kind of look similar facial features. They have kind of protruding foreheads, and they don't speak. The group that AYLA was from, they had a involved language that they spoke to each other. They spoke with words. This other group, they don't speak with words really. They use sign language. They have this sign language type of way of talking. They kind of grunt, and they can't It's like they don't have it in them. They're not capable of having a language. Kind of like you could teach a dog to kind of sound like he's talking, but it's not really. Like they bark and they growl and but they can't really form a full language like a human can. So they just kind of say each other's names, like Brun, Brock, but they don't say full sentences and words and stuff. And they're like not as educated and as evolved as the other group was. And they're cave people. They live in caves, but their cave collapsed because of the earthquake. So they're traveling to try to find another cave to live in. Walking in a line. They have a certain way of doing it. The book is very descriptive, and every little detail it tells how they do things, how they hunt, how they gather food, how they live. Like it's very intricate, detailed. The lady that wrote these books did a lot of research, went to museums and talked to historians, and so it's very good. The leader of the tribe, I can't remember his name. It's like Braun or Brun, something like that. He has a sister. I think her name's like, I wish I knew her name. Like Olga, Una, something like that. And she's like the medicine woman, the healer of the group. So the women don't have much power they don't have like any rights or really at all in this group, but she's the healer, so she's a little bit higher status than any other woman and has a little bit more of a say-so. And he loves his sister too and respects her, and so he kind of listens to her a little bit, but still he's the man and he's the leader, so what he says goes. So she sees this girl laying on the ground, this like 3-year-old little blonde haired, blue eyed little girl laying on the road. To them, she's ugly and creepy. Like, to them, she's like deformed and ugly looking because she doesn't look like them. So to them, she's, ugh. But, like us, the reader, if we saw her, we'd probably think she's an adorable little girl. But to them, they're like, oh, like, she's weird looking. She doesn't look like our children. But she takes pity on her because she's a loving woman that wants to take care of poor children like that, or sick animals or whatever. She says, please, can I take her in and heal her and take care of her as my own? I'll like adopt her. The men are hesitant. They think that they should just leave her there for dead. But he finally decides, okay, whatever, take her in. And she raises her up as her own. But Ayla's treated as like an outcast. This other type of group of cave people take Ayla in and raise her as one of them, but she's still treated as like an outcast. And they don't understand her. They think she looks different. It's almost like they're intimidated and scared by her a little bit. She stands up straight and upward, and they're like, no, you can't do that. You need to bend down. You need to duck down. You need to crouch down more like us. Like, they don't want her to be herself. Like, they want her to be like them. She tries to speak in her language. They don't understand. They're confused. They don't like that. They're like, no, you can't do that. You need to learn our language. You need to talk like us with the hand signals and whatnot. So she she forgets her language, and she learns their language. Women don't have much rights. They are not allowed to hunt. They're not allowed to use weapons. It's like I think that the punishment is like death or something if they use weapons or try to hunt and stuff like that. That's for the men. The women gather food and they take care of the babies and they keep their heads down and they do what the men say. If the man wants something, then they do it. They don't talk back. They don't resist. And that goes for everything, including sex. if they want to do something with him, they have to just get down and let the man do what he wants, which is awful, but that's the way it is. So, AYLA, and they have religious beliefs that are very complicated. They believe in these totems. They believe when a woman gets her period, that it means her totem is like battling and it's getting wounded, so she's bleeding. Because the woman's totem, of course, is the weaker totem. It's always, the men have strong totems, the women have weak totems. So the woman's totem always like loses, and then it's bleeding, and then she's on her period. And when that happens, they send her away, and she has to stay separate from the tribe in like a separate area until that's over with. Then she can come back. So they do find a cave eventually. They settle in this cave, and there's like this smaller little cave up above. So that's where the women go when they have their period. So whenever a man or a girl comes of age, like when they're in their preteen age and they're about to go through puberty and stuff like that, when a girl's about to start a period and stuff like that, they go through a ceremony where they assign them to a totem, or that the wise men of the group go and they like smoke this peyote type stuff, and they hallucinate and they see a vision of what that person's totem is supposed to be. And then the leader, the wise man of the group, he'll say, your totem is a bear, your totem is a cave lion, if they're a male. If they're a girl, it's a rabbit or a squirrel or some smaller creature that probably wouldn't win. The men are all strong creatures like predators, and the girls are weaker, smaller animals that are more like prey. So it's time for AYLA to have her totem chose. And they go and smoke this stuff, and it's like a crazy party, crazy ceremony. And the wise man says that because she has the scar of the cave lion on her thigh, he sees that her totem is a cave lion. And they're like, no, that's not possible. She's a girl. That's too strong of a totem for her. No, that's never going to work. That's not, yeah. He's like, but that's her totem. I know it is. It's a cave lion. I can't remember exactly what they think. Something to do with they don't think that you get pregnant from having sex. They think that you get pregnant because of your totem fighting with other totems, and that like the women's totem, if it loses or something weird, that she gets pregnant. I don't know. They're like, she's a cave lion totem, so her totem's never going to win or never going to lose, so she's never going to have children. She's never going to get pregnant. That's what they think. So there's this guy in the group that's, he's been a jerk to AYLA ever since they were kids. He's just like this evil, psychotic, bully type guy that just, he hated her from the moment she showed up, and he's always treated her horribly and taunted her. And now that they're older, teenagers, even though he hates her and stuff, he decides to rape her to have more control over her. So he grabs her and so this guy rapes her and she gets pregnant. And they're all amazed because they're like, how is this possible? AYLA is smart enough to put two and two together, and she's like, I wonder if that event had something to do with me getting pregnant, because it happened after that. It seems to happen to all these other girls after that has happened. And she's smart enough to think of the real reason why she got pregnant, but everybody else tells her differently, so she's like, I guess I'm just crazy. So she has a son, and he's half her, half this looking like the other tribe. So he looks kind of deformed, kind of strange, like he has a big bulbous head, and I don't know exactly. They describe it in the book that he looks different because he's half her, half this other type of tribe that looks different. So they sometimes those tribes would just kill a baby like that, but they don't kill him, and they raise him, and they raise him like a normal child and let him live. And it's right about the time that different people that were nice to her in the group are dying off. Ayla's being left with only these people that don't accept her and don't like her. So there's a new leader of the group, which is the guy that raped her, and he banishes her from the group. He says, "You're going to go off on your own and live. You're no longer welcome with us." And they keep her child to be raised by somebody else, but they banish her. So she has to just leave this group. She's like 17, 18 years old, something like that. Young lady just going off on her own to survive. And that's the end of the book. The first book, The Clan of the Cave Bear. And it's a really good story. Very detailed. I don't know how accurate it is, but I like to think that it's possible that it's an accurate portrayal of what it was like back then. Now, the second book is my favorite book, my absolute favorite, The Valley of the Horses. It's the sequel to that book, and it starts off right where the other one left off. She's on her own now, surviving. She finds a cave to live in. She has made herself weapons to hunt. She hunts, and she sees these wild horses in a field. She starts to get ideas. She's never seen somebody ride a horse before. She doesn't know if it's possible. She just has like this idea, what if it's somehow possible that I could ride this horse? If I could feel how fast they're going because I'm holding on to them, and I could feel the speed of them running. And she comes up with a plan to jump off of a tree onto a horse, and she basically breaks a horse and makes it her own horse, like people later did in more modern times. And she gets this horse to where she could ride it, and it's tame, and she can use it to hunt. And then she goes off farther and farther to try to find animals to hunt. And she discovers a baby cave lion that's been abandoned and wounded and stuff, and it's laying there about to die. And she takes it in, heals it, raises it to where the cave lion is pretty tame. And now it's still wild, but it's tame-ish, to where it's almost like a pet to her. And her horse runs off and gets pregnant and then has a baby horse. So she has a foal. She has like a grown horse and a baby horse and a cave lion. Getting kind of unrealistic maybe, but I don't know. And then her cave lion grows up to be a grown cave lion. And it's a little bit hard to handle now. She could tell that he doesn't want to be tamed and kept with her. So she lets him go and lets him go back to the wild. And she is out hunting, and she hears screaming of a human, like human screaming of a male human. And she's like, what in the world? Because she hasn't seen any humans in a long time. And she doesn't remember anybody of her, like people like her. because she was like 3 when she left her family, and she doesn't remember what they look like. So as far as she knows, she's never seen any people like her because she's forgotten all of that. And she sees these 2 men, and they look like her, and they're being attacked by a cave lion. She realizes the cave lion is her cave lion that she raised. So she is scared, but she thinks maybe I could get him to leave them alone. So she jumps out and she tells him, leave them alone, get away from them. And the cave lion recognizes her and is like, oh, and he stops and he stops attacking the guys. The one guy is dead. Like he's been killed. The other guy is wounded really bad and he's like unconscious. They were brothers and they were out like adventuring, seeing what they could see, I guess. Like explorers. She takes the one guy in to her cave and nurses his wounds, and he wakes up and he's like, he's in a cave and he sees this beautiful, blonde, gorgeous girl. Blonde hair, blue eyes, gorgeous girl like an angel. And he's like, am I dead? What has happened? He finds out that his brother has died. He's very upset about that. He tries to talk to her and he doesn't understand why she's not. He's like, is she deaf? Like, why is she not really responding? She's not talking. And then he notices she's making like hand movements and stuff. And he's like, maybe she's talking with her hands, like hand signals. And maybe she can't talk. And then he figures it out that she can talk physically. She could talk, she could hear, but she's talking with her hands. And he's seen many different types of people with different languages and stuff like that. And he's like, maybe she's from a group of people that don't talk. Like they use more hand signals to talk. And he learns more about her. She starts to learn his language with him. And they start to kind of fall in love with each other. And she explains her life story, what happened, how she was raised by this other primitive group of people. And then they cast her out, and how she tamed this horse, and so on and so forth. And there's some sexy time. It's the first book that I read which described in detail, people doing the deed. So I was like, oh my goodness. When I was a kid, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so bad. If my mom knew I was reading this, I think she kind of forgot about how detailed it was. But at the end of the book, they decide to move on, leave the cave, and he tells her he's going to take her to see his people and stuff like that. The next book is called The Mammoth Hunters, and that's when AYLA, and his name is John Delaire, I believe, John Delaire, something like that. They meet up with this other group and they're hunting mammoth, and she learns about these other people and stuff like that. And the last book, I think I haven't actually read, The Plains of Passage, where they kind of go on and it's like they're retiring, like they have children and they live together, and it's like the end of the series. But I've heard that there's even more books after that, so I don't know what those books are about. But I would definitely recommend the first 2 books, Clan of the Cave Bear and The Valley of the Horses. The Valley of the Horses is my favorite book, but I think you need to read The Clan of the Cave Bear first, so you have that backstory and you know what's going on. Because I think it would be confusing to start with The Valley of the Horses. Because you got to know the whole story first of AYLA and how she came to be before you start with The Valley of the Horses. Because then you'd be like, what's going on? I'm confused. And then, if you want, you could just stop right there. The Mammoth Hunters wasn't as exciting for me, but if you were really into the story, then maybe you want to keep on going on after that.